Frank spent at least an hour and a half on this outline and just threw it away right out of the gate because he thought about it and said, shit, let's tell him the truth. Let's tell him the truth. What's really happening out here in the world.
You're listening to Let Me Speak to a Manager with Frank Cava and Ian Mathews.
What a crock of shit.
Yeah, that was hot mic, Sam.
You can't say God on the air.
Don't worry, nobody's listening anyway.
Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Frankie.
Ian, you son of a bitch.
Frankie, we have done multiple interview episodes so far and largely focused on, what kind of questions a manager should ask and just as importantly, how to answer some of those questions. But what we haven't talked about yet is what do you do after the interview? You finish an interview, you feel like it went okay, you've left the office and now you're playing that waiting game. So this episode's all about the best ways to follow up after an interview.
So there was an article in the Harvard Business Review about this exact process. And we built an agenda on it, and I called Ian up and I left him a message and I said, Ian, this is my opinion. So here it is. There's four things, right? There's the process, there's the follow-up note, there's the exception, like when you would ask for more feedback before the person gets back to you. And then there's like the feedback note. These are things. You've done the interview and then you write a quick thank you, which you should do. And then there's a few things you could do in the process. So I think let's go into this, Ian. Let's talk very, very quickly about the note. In the 90s, when I was really interviewing coming out of college, I always wrote a handwritten note with anyone I interviewed with. Nowadays, the most effective thing is to get home and write an email and do it within about 2 hours. That's it. Just do an email, say thank you. Like you could even do it from your car before you leave on your phone or have it pre-written before you go in and hit send. The only thing that ever happens with a thank you card to me is I can see, wow, that person was well thought through and organized, but the handwritten one, it's too slow nowadays with mail. You got to just do it through email. Do you disagree with that?
I don't know that it hurts you to also follow up with a handwritten note. I know you're big on those and so am I. I would also say when you want to follow up and you want to do it quick. And I would say this is with interviews, Frankie, or sales calls or any business meeting, use the medium that the person you were meeting with was already using. So if in going back and forth, you were figuring out, hey, let's meet at a coffee shop, and there was a lot of texting with you and the hiring manager, I would say immediately follow up with, wow, that was great. I learned a lot really kind of quick. I would use a text because that's what they were using with you. If it was email, use an email. And I'd say you are not going to ever hurt yourself by writing a nice handwritten thank you note. And if it's between you and someone else, and it's really close, that could help you. That could help you over if you did that and someone else didn't. Now, I would say a handwritten note is worthless, Frankie, if it's just hey, enjoyed the interview, interested in what's next. If you're going to write something in handwriting, make it very specific to your individual conversation and make it specific on how you can help that hiring manager. That's all right.
So let's go through this. And I'm going to use an example that I use nowadays. So if you're going to send a handwritten note, speed matters. In most instances, you're making a hiring decision on someone the same day that you had an interview. So usually we'll do a panel, we'll do 2, 3, 4 candidates in a day, and either we're going to make an offer or we're not. But by the end of that day, potentially the next day, we're going to make a decision. So if you're going to send a note or a handwritten note or something, speed actually really matters. And one of the things that I do, it's not for interviews. If I have a really good meeting with somebody important, I courier the note so they have it that day. So like I'll get back from my meeting, I'll write something very specific about it, something I liked about the conversation, and then I'll have it in their hands that day. Now, if you are that organized, that would actually make an impact. But shy of anything else, there is nothing you can do post-interview to change someone's mind. Like you might be able to win a tiebreaker, but when Ian and I built this whole agenda, and the message I left Ian is this. This is fucking worthless. If you're listening to this and you're on the fence and you're not sure how to win an interview afterwards, you've lost. So what I want to talk about is the fucking thank you card, your handwriting, the stamp you pick. If it's a text, if it's a LinkedIn message, worthless. What is not worthless is what you do when you're in the room. That is the priority. It's not when you get home. It's not what you do afterwards. Worthless, meaningless, doesn't matter. So what we should talk about is what do you need to do to make sure you own the room? Ian and I have gone through and done 12 of the big questions and how to answer them. Be prepared. Be on time. Have good, compelling stories that show examples of you as being someone who is teachable, who has failed but succeeded through hard work and process. If you do these types of things, you're going to give an interviewer a lot of reasons to want to hire you. Ian's really big on research. He wants you to look up the company, understand the role, talk about history. Where are we in the economic cycle? Those are things that if you come into an interview with Ian, you're going to win because those are the prep items he's really prepared for. So what this entire podcast boils down to is you've got a hiring manager dedicated, phone off, sitting, looking at you. Don't blow it. The thank you card when you get home doesn't change what happened in that room.
I mean, I love that. I when Frank brought this topic to me, I was struggling to think of a time where a follow-up thank you note changed my mind. And I couldn't think of one other than one instance. And I'm talking about one instance in 20 years of hiring. So Frankie, we did have one time where, and this was a college panel. So remember the old days where you'd bring like 12 kids in and you would they'd come to the office and they'd interview with 4 managers each and you'd give them lunch and you'd do a little dog and pony and then send them off on their way. You remember those days?
Of course.
Okay. So, in that kind of a session, you got 12 kids that all have relatively similar grades from the exact same college, interviewing for the same position. Most of them with work experience other than a couple of crappy internships. So it's really hard for that group to really differentiate outside of energy and attitude. And I do remember one time where we were sitting around and we had to hire 4 out of 12 that came in interview, and we were split on a couple of kids. And in the meeting, so it was me, I think like an office manager, a sales manager, and a profit center manager. So 4 of us, and we're going through the candidates, and 4 are automatic outs. They sucked. We all agreed they sucked. 2 were automatic yeses. And then we were kind of debating 4 people for the last 2. In the meeting, while we were discussing it, the receptionist came up with a thank you letter. And, it was addressed to all 4 of us. This person was the only person that did it, sat in the lobby when they were done with their interviews and wrote all 4 of us a personalized handwritten note. So she came in and handed out 4 of the notes, and they were all from the same person. And this was one of the 4 that we were debating whether to make it in. Yep. And I can say that this person bumped someone else because they did that. That was this is the only time I could think of in 20 years where a thank you note was like, I was wrong in that interview. It wasn't we were wrong. It was that we were really close between this person and someone else.
You were looking for a reason. You're kind of fine. It's a sift. Someone who's going to have the organization to walk across the street, sit down, write a card, have it back in your hands within an hour is someone you're like, that person deserves a second chance or a shot. And I've had a very similar story where someone literally went to their car and sent us an email within minutes. And we're like, okay, it wasn't, we didn't give them a job because of it. We gave them a second chance to sit down with us because of it, but that is it. Like it is not a saving grace. It's not going to get you a job. It's not going to convince. You've got an hour. The time is a nice gesture.
Yeah. But if Frank, your point earlier is so dead on with any thank you. This is not thanking someone for a wedding gift where you have 60 days to send it and people are okay with that because they get it. You're busy. if you're going to send a thank you and you want to impress someone, whether it's handwritten, email, anything, it's got to be immediate. And I loved your example of how you courier right over. So I met with an attorney who didn't charge me. And I was talking, one of my businesses, I had questions. This is a little bit ago. And I was trying to decide whether he would be an attorney that I would want to work with on future real estate deals. But I really just had some questions, and he was being nice. And he was like, you know what? It's kind of a friend of a friend. I get home from work. Can you come by at like 9:00 after the kids go to bed? I'm like, are you sure? He's like, yeah, I'm sure. And I was going to just try to like take 10 minutes of his time, 15 minutes of his time. He ended up giving me an hour and a half. He's stayed up late after a long day of work, just helping me. And I left. I remember thinking like, wow, it was so cool that he did this. I went home. I got 2 of my best bottles that were in my house, and I wrote him a thank you note. And I was back at his house at 6 a.m. and I put 2 bottles of wine, expensive wine, on his front porch with a handwritten note from me at 6 a.m. the next morning. So 8 hours later. And he saw them on his way out to work. And I didn't do it for any other reason than I genuinely appreciated the fact that he took that time for me. And I thought waiting a week would be disrespectful. If his time was worth it to stay up, I certainly could get up early and show him my appreciation for what he did. And I still work with him today. Like he and I still work together. He really appreciated it. But same thing Frank said, if you're going to say thanks to someone, don't dilly, do it right away.
So in the follow-up process, there's one exception that I've ever seen that happened to me. I wanted to work at NVR Ryan Homes out of college, and I met them in early January, right? Somewhere in January. And everybody else I met at this career fair had called me and scheduled an interview or had a job offer in front of me, and they hadn't even followed up to get me in like my first interview. And what I did, I met the company on it wasn't a campus interview, but it's essentially a campus interview. And what I did is I called the person up who I'd met, whose business card I had. And I said, listen, I really like your company. I think I'd be a great fit there. I haven't heard back from you. Are you planning on interviewing me, or should I make a job decision elsewhere? And the conversation was this: no, we really do like you. We want to offer you an opportunity to come interview with us. We're just behind. I said, okay, I've got to make some decisions. I got people breathing down my throat here. I don't want to lose other opportunities. When? So that is the one time where like the HR department at Ryan Homes blows. Like there's no other way to put it. Like HR sucks. It's the reason that Ian ended up going and finding a subcontractor to meet his incredible hiring needs because they couldn't keep up. So this was something I didn't know at the time as a 22-year-old, but I would later learn. But when you see that kind of proactiveness, I think it actually matters to hiring managers. So that's the kind of thing you can do outside of the arena, but you get the job based upon what you do inside of that interview.
Yeah, I love that. What I would say is, Frank, I think the immediate follow-up thank you note, if you didn't do a good job in the interview, you're not getting a job based on your thank you note. Doesn't matter what the hell you say, how you say it, text, email, social media, DM on LinkedIn, none of it matters really. Right. It's kind of expected you do something. If you don't do it, I kind of think it could hurt you if you don't just say something about thank you for giving me your time. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Like, could we start with saying if you don't do it, it could hurt you? Like it'd be weird if I interviewed 3 people and two said thank you right away and one didn't say.
I got to be honest with you. I hire a lot of people. I almost never get a thank you card from anybody anymore. I don't get a thank you text. I don't get a thank you email.
So ungrateful bastards in this world.
Yeah,
these
you
days.
do stand out a little bit from the standpoint of it can
becoming
help
a lost art. Becoming a lost art a little.
It can help you from the standpoint of, wasn't that nice? But it doesn't help you win the interview.
Here's what I will say, though. I will say that follow-up is incredibly important. So a lot of times when you don't get a job, it's not that the managers didn't like you. It's that they liked someone else a little more at the time. And they're only looking for one position. And maybe we interviewed 3 people. And maybe all 3 of them during headier times where the market was really hot and the wind was at our back, we'd have hired all 3 of you. But it's 2023 and positions are limited right now that we're looking to fill, and we don't have the same growth. So we only need one person. What I would say is, don't take that personal. Like that, the old ABBA song, if you change your mind, I'll be first in line, take a chance on me. I love that. Like that line is perfect for a job seeker. Just because you were a no today doesn't mean you'll be a no in 3 months, 6 months. So I think follow-up, more important, is sending a text maybe 3 months later. Just, hey, just wanted to give you, I remember in our interview, we talked about so-and-so. I just wanted to tell you, I made President's Club for my company this year. Or just, something kind of quick jumping out there. Hey, I know I didn't get the last one, but wanted to check to see, how's your growth going? I think follow-up, that has worked for people many times, where someone out of the blue 6 months later would just follow up, and I had just forgotten about them, and we're in a desperate place and need a bunch of people. And I'm like, oh, we did like that person. I'll bring them back up. And it's like, yeah, we did. And we bring them in because they followed up.
If you're listening to this and you're a hiring manager, this has worked for me very well too. I have offered people positions. They have said no, but I've kept their resumes.
Yeah.
Rob, my salesman, he's been here 7 years. He turned me down and went and worked at a different company when I first met him. I followed up with him. I put it in my calendar. I thought he was an incredible salesman. I put it in my calendar, call him 6 months later. He goes, you know what? This isn't what I thought it was going to be. We had a beer, and that's how I hired him. So that works too. And there's people who are in the interview like I just hired somebody that I've known for 15 years that I've been flirting with for a long time. Like I wanted them to come work here. Like that kind of follow-up does work if you are the hiring manager and you're cultivating relationships and you're building things. There's someone I'm meeting with in a week and a half who's probably never going to come work here, but he might. And I've been kind of working towards getting him on board for a while. So as a hiring manager, there is some strategy to it. But if you were impressed by a company as someone who's interviewing and you do want to work there and it didn't work out, you can ask. Now, what I will tell you is this. We have a pretty light HR policy compared to corporate around here. And it's kind of by design. Corporations are not going to tell you why you didn't get a job. They're just not. There's too much risk for a big corporation to be honest with you. So they're just going to go the company line. We didn't have time for you at the moment. It's not the right fit. We'll follow your resume. It's BS. If someone follows up with me several times and I know they're the wrong fit, what I will do is I will give them my time. I'll do a phone call. I'll do a text. I'll do an email. Usually I don't leave a written chain. So I'll usually do it either over the phone or maybe, hey, come grab a coffee at the office. And I'll say, these are the reasons I didn't hire you, or I'll give constructive feedback, but I won't do that out of the gate. And I won't do it with somebody who doesn't have tenacity. But like if someone's still not found the right job 6 or 12 months down the road, I will help them. Ian, this happened last night. I have a 1099, a subcontractor who I worked with for 5 years, who I haven't worked with in 3. She's like, hey, it's a little slow. Would you be willing to help me drum up some business? Is basically what she said. That's an absolute yes. Like that is somebody that I'm going to help get a job. I literally put her name out in front of 5 people last night before I left the office. So it works in some ways, but to get a job, it's not terribly effective.
Yeah, I think it works in sales, and really interviewing is selling. You're selling yourself. You're trying to convince someone. You're being persuasive. No is not forever, right? No today does not mean no in 2 months and 6 months. And we've talked about raising money before. We had a bunch of people that I talked to about investing in Keep 2 years ago that said no, that just said yes. We have 5 or 6 people that turned down the first round. And, now the company looks a little farther along, some of those things. But the reason why they were engaged this time, and it was so easy for me, is throughout the last 2 years, I was sending them things. Hey, look at this new ad we're running. Look at our new product specs just came out. Hey, here's our production unit, showing them our progress. So you said no because of these reasons. Look at the progress we're making. Look at, you were concerned about it. Look, it's working. Look, we have a production partner now. Look, we've sold 50,000. So I'm dripping over time. I'm not selling, but I'm dripping because you said no because you didn't have enough information. Let me give you more information. I would say the same with interviewing. are sharing more information. Look, I know you were concerned that I didn't have sales experience. You might be interested to know I just took a sales job with my company and now I'm on commission. And last month I finished first out of 7 reps. That stuff is all great. Like as a hiring manager, I'm dying to find people that are proactive like that are eager to share their accomplishments.
You've told me stories about people who have gone, changed career, done different things, stayed in touch with you over time, and you come back and hired them later. So follow-up matters. Follow-up matters in business. Relationships matter in business. A thank you card or some type of follow-up after an interview is not going to change someone's mind immediately, almost always. But what I will tell you is nurturing relationships, fostering good relationships. These things are undefeated.
Yeah.
If you would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what most people say, have you ever used a realtor to buy a house?
Yeah.
Like what do the good realtors do when you buy a house?
One, they ask you a lot of questions before they start showing you anything.
After you bought it, what happens?
Oh, after the closing? Oh, they follow up. How do you like the house? How's things? How are you liking living there? Because they want to know if I'm getting antsy and moving again. They want to give me the next time I buy.
The best realtors I've ever used send out a monthly newsletter.
Yeah.
Don't forget about me. Don't forget about me. Don't forget about me. It's really cheap. And it comes every month. And even Paxton does that. Paxton's not the most organized dude we've ever met. He does it every single month. And if you bought a house 8 years ago with him, he keeps sending you that letter because for the cost of printing the letter in the envelope and a stamp, it's follow-up. So there are ways that follow-up works, but it's impossible to overcome a bad interview with a letter. You must give the goods.
You got to kill the interview. It's 99.9%. If you blow the interview, your letter and follow-up they don't do anything to convince me otherwise. You have 1 hour to blow it out. And that's your time to shine. So if you think your little follow-up letter at the end is going to fix anything, it's not. I would spend all of my time thinking about prep, studying the company, studying what the company looks for, what their managers look for. Do your homework like crazy and practice behavioral interviews. Come up with 30 great stories that could describe just about any question they ask you and be ready to tell those stories to explain it. If you don't do that, your follow-up letter will do nothing to help you. You're done. And in fact, most managers know within 20 minutes of the interview whether you're getting hired or not. So a thank you letter, they've already decided you're out 20 minutes in or you're in before the interview even ends.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest with you. If you were a crappy interview and you send me a thank you letter, I probably am not going to read it because you've already wasted some of my time. I'm not going to waste a lot.
You're not even going to open it. You're not even going to open it.
It
won't even get to you.
But what I will tell you is this. Let me speak to a manager is once again debunking myths. The thank you letter and follow-up is a bunch of those are our notes. Throw them away. Win the interview.
Frank spent at least an hour and a half on this outline and just threw it away right out of the gate because he thought about it and said, let's tell him the truth. Let's tell him the truth. What's really happening out here in the world. And here's the truth. We are a top 10 business podcast and we are very excited about it. If you're new to this show, hit subscribe and turn on the notifications. And if you are one of our longtime listeners, we love you and we'll love you even more if you give us a 5-star review with some nice comments so we know who you are on Apple Podcasts. Frankie,
good seeing you, buddy.
I'm going to follow up with a thank you note for doing such a good job on this episode, bro.
My ass.
See ya.